that line that the ISI shouldn't cross for you in your view? Or is the ISI able to do whatever it wants?
No, the ISI would do anything possible, anything that it can do to carry out that assessment.
So there's no limits, there's no laws, there's no restraints?
None, except for the mission that it has.
And if that applies to him?
मैंने न्यूट्रल्स को बड़े क्लियरली बताया कि ये बड़ा ये मुआवजा है। अगर मुझे ये कोई कहता ना आज से 3 साल पहले कि पाकिस्तान अपने तीसरे और चौथे साल में 5.6% पे ग्रो करेगा, दौलत में इजाफा, और चौथे साल में 6%, और कोरोना के बावजूद जब दुनिया में तबाही, तो मैं माना नहीं था। तो ये तो मुआवजा हुआ है ना, हमारे अल्लाह का खास करम हुआ है हमारे पे। और मैं ज़रूर अपनी इकोनॉमिक टीम को दाद दूंगा कि हम बड़ी अच्छी पॉलिसीज़ बनी। मैंने बिल्कुल ये जाके बताया, मैंने कहा ये अगर आपने किया इस वक्त, ये जो साजिश हो रही है ये कामयाब हो गई, तो ये हमारी जो इकोनॉमी है वो बड़ी मुश्किल से यहाँ पहुंची। जैसे ही कॉन्फिडेंस गया ये नीचे जाएगी। फिर शौकत तरीन गया, शौकत तरीन ने प्रेजेंटेशन दी, उसने पूरा बताया कि ये सिचुएशन है, पूरा नंबर्स बताए, और वही हुआ। जैसे वो गवर्नमेंट गई, अब हालात देखे कि इकोनॉमी, रुपया किधर जा रहा है, और आगे जो मुझे तो जो खौफ आ रहा है, जो महंगाई का अब समुंदर आ रहा है आगे। अभी तो शुरू हुआ है महंगाई, अभी तो इन्होंने पेट्रोल और डीजल और बढ़ाना है, तो उसका जो इम्पैक्ट पड़े, अब बिजली बढ़ानी है, उसका इम्पैक्ट सब चीज़ों पे पड़ेगा। तो
बट क्या रिस्पांस था, क्या वो समझते थे कि ये कुछ नहीं हो रहा, आप फजूल में बात कर रहे हैं, या वो कहते थे कि हम बस खामोश हैं?
हमें तो कहा कि कोई साजिश नहीं है और हम न्यूट्रल हैं।
Let's first begin by discussing who Imran Khan is and why he came into politics. This is an individual who had no need to come into politics. His main agenda for coming into politics was he was an outspoken critic of government mismanagement and corruption in Pakistan. And this was it. I mean, his main agenda has been to awaken the public and to do away with this system of the haves and the have-nots. One rule of law for the haves and another rule of law for the have-nots, and really wake up the public domain to understand, how they're being enslaved in a sort of manner. So have people wake up for their rights. And during the last 26 or 27 years of his political career, never has a politician been so vilified by, for example, the media, by the opposition. Why? Because he's an outsider. Remember, in Pakistani politics, a lot of the politicians in today's day and age are from political families who have been in politics for decades and decades, like the two ruling elite families. The Zardari, who's living on the name of Bhutto, and then you got the Sharifs. And Sharifs obviously were brought into politics by General Zia, but this is another story for another day. And then you've got even a lot of the cabinet ministers, like I'll give you this Maulana Fazlur Rahman. His father was in politics. Saad Rafiq, his father was in politics. Khwaja Asif, his father was in politics. So all these people, most of these politicians, they've been, their family dynasties have been in politics. Hina Rabina Kar, her father Ghulam Mustafa Har was in politics. So it's sort of keep it in the family. Here we have an individual who's come about, who's not part of the system. He's an outsider. So he's vilified, absolutely vilified in the media, to the point that instead of arguing or debating his policies, what they would do is they would more or less character assassinate him by targeting his character or his associations as such, like his former marriage with Jemima Goldsmith, labeling him such name as Yahudi agent and somebody who's not good for the Pakistani domain for the public and so on and so forth. So instead of rather than tackling the substance of his argument, they would speak against his character, against his motives, and so on and so forth. So, and as time has sort of, they say time is the greatest healer, because over time, everything that's been said against him has basically backfired in effect, because it's untrue. And as he was in the public domain, he was becoming a very, very popular leader. In 2018, during the elections, obviously he would have won a lot more seats than he actually did. Where the opposition or claimed, okay, the RTS system went down and so on and so forth. That was to their benefit, not to Imran Khan's benefit, because in actual fact Imran Khan would have won a lot of seats, a lot more seats in fact. A prime example, which has later transpired, is Khwaja Asif's seat in Sialkot. He had lost that seat by quite a margin, but then he put a call out to the powers that be, who you call the establishment or the deep state, and basically it transpires that he's won the election. So a lot of this, and again, this was done by design. Again, the establishment also understood that Imran Khan is an outsider. He needed to be tested. He needed to be tested in the sense that he was brought in with a crippled government, a half government as such. So God forbid if he didn't fall into line or he went against policies and so on and so forth, he could easily be taken out, which is, if you look at how his government failed, it was when a couple of his allies, in fact, sidelined from the party. Anyways, we'll get to that, but so the main agenda, obviously he came into power and he would have got a lot more seats. This is again my view, and if you look into history, you'll see that this is correct. He's brought in with a crippled government, handicapped government as such, not a 2/3 majority, so he's unable to pass certain laws, etc. And again, this was done by design, i.e., test. And what you have to understand is the previous government, the Sharifs, they were aware that they weren't going to come into power. They had already known this. And by Miftah Ismail, who's the current finance minister, by his own admission in many TV shows, he said, I hope and pray we don't win the 2018 elections, because we've made a right mess of everything. Yes. The economy was literally, he said, we've left landmines in the economy, or Ishaq Dar had left landmines in the economy. And he said anybody who's going to come in, it's going to take him many, many years to try and fix what we've done. And that's exactly what Imran Khan had to do. I mean, if you look at the history, the Pakistani rupee is pegged against the dollar, as are all, being the dollar being the reserve currency. But these guys had fixed the rate of the dollar, as opposed to having it free floating. And what that entailed was basically what the rate had, the conversion rate was. It wasn't a true picture of the economy at the time, and obviously given the reserves that Pakistan had, Pakistan was literally at a juncture where it would be bankrupt in effect. So what Imran Khan did in the first couple of years is they had to make difficult decisions, very difficult decisions, likes of going to the IMF, which he was a hard critic of. He didn't, he opposed going to the IMF, because they make you put certain conditions which are not favorable to your public and so on and so forth. But anyways, these difficult decisions were made, and they straightened out the economy. And then something came into the equation which nobody expected, and that was this COVID phenomenon. It's a global pandemic that's occurred. Economies around the world have shut down. Economies are, when this thing come around, you should have seen the fear. In the UK at least, it was ghost towns. People wouldn't come out of their houses. Yes, and once again, Imran Khan, he decided, no, I can't just lock down our country. I can't close down our country. We can't just do this. So he implemented smart lockdowns and so on and so forth. And again, the opposition screamed and shouted, he's going to kill us all. And, again, the media vilified him. But later, as I said, time is the best healer, and it reveals everything. Countries around the world use Pakistan as an example of how we should have dealt with the pandemic, and Imran Khan's decision again was correct. But let's go back to a point I made earlier. The general public, and I realize this having spent the last year and a half on the ground, the general public, unfortunately, I'd say the majority have not been given the education to understand certain things. A lot of people, they're high educated, they understand these things, but people within Pakistan don't look beyond the borders of Pakistan. And the other problem is that the media doesn't help. Everything is breaking news. Imran Khan puts up electricity by 3-4 rupees, and the media crucifies him. They don't talk about the history and previously how things have happened, but the media crucifies him. So this is the whole situation. Now, as I said, I spent a year and a half on the ground, and I used to actually argue at times with people, and these are learned individuals even. You'd sit down and talk with people who understand learning. They'd be like, no, what's he done? He hasn't done anything, he's incompetent, and so on and so forth. But again, all this information is now coming back to light, where the economy was growing at an amazing pace. People were investing in the country and so on and so forth. So, so on the ground, general consensus was, with all these inflation occurring as a direct resultant of COVID, and not only that, when Imran Khan removed the fixed rupee against the dollar, he made it free floating. Again, the media vilified him and said, oh look, it was at 120 and now it's at 160 and so on and so forth. So going back to this COVID phenomenon, more money has been printed. Let's use the dollar as an example. More dollars have been printed during these 2 years of COVID than have been printed since the dollar has been in existence. What does that mean exactly? What that basically means is when dollars are printed, and this is money printed out of thin air, this is what you call a fiat currency. There is no intrinsic value in this money, it's just paper printed out of thin air. And every time you print more money, what you're doing is you're devaluing that currency. So your dollar that was in 2019 was a lot stronger, was worth a lot more than your dollar that is in existence today, which is 2022. And this was happening worldwide. It's a global issue again. And henceforth, what we're seeing now is runaway inflation. Even the policymakers don't know how to handle this issue. It's, this runaway inflation. I mean, inflation, which they can't seem to control. So people within Pakistan, the general population, don't understand this. And unfortunately, the media again didn't help, and the opposition, etc., with their propaganda didn't help, and the blame was shifted on to Khan. Oh, Khan doesn't know what he's doing, and every time the petrol prices would go up again 5 rupees. Oh, look, he's put petrol prices up, and this, that, the other. Okay, so the ground realities are, in fact, and they're coming to light now. I mean, the budget is about to be published. And even before the budget is published, the economic indicators by the then opposition are saying, hold on a second, Pakistan was at 6% growth during Khan's tenure. So, truth always comes to light. And as a direct resultant of all this, Imran Khan lost a lot of his vote bank. I'll go back to what I've said earlier, is on the ground I used to argue with people day in, day out. And again, these are very learned people. I mean, you'd talk to like the Mazdoors, etc., who aren't so learned, etc. But you put the point across. But even with learned individuals, they're sort of blindsided by everything. It's very difficult to explain to them. And on the ground, reality was Imran Khan lost a lot of his vote bank. Was he, or had he gone into elections a year down the line, he would have lost. Very simple and straightforward. He would have lost because a lot of his initial vote bank were saying, no, we're not going to vote for him. Okay? As a resultant of, everything that's going on in the world. Okay? So a plan has been hatched. And this is my, again, my 2 rupees worth. This is what I believe is happening. And time will tell. And I have faith in my analysis. And however, again, we'll go back to what I said before. Nothing is ever what it seems. The other thing you've got to look at is what has Imran Khan done in the last few years. If we go back to the early 70s, and Bhutto managed to do this was the OIC. He gathered round the Muslim nations. An OIC meeting was held in Pakistan. And would you believe that every single member who attended that OIC member today has either been removed or assassinated? Okay. Who was the last person to be assassinated? Gaddafi. King Faisal was assassinated shortly after. Bhutto was hanged by, again, a regime change operation. Okay. With pawns within Pakistan, but again, that's another story for another day. But what did Imran Khan do on more than one occasion? 2 OIC meetings. If you go around the world and you travel around the world, you speak to people around the world, he bought Pakistan a lot of recognition amongst the Muslim Awam. People knew who he was. He gave, he made overseas Pakistanis proud to be Pakistani, as opposed to during the war on terror times, post 9/11, where Pakistan was always being blamed, and then obviously with this Bin Laden affair. Okay, so for the first time in history, overseas Pakistanis, or Pakistanis as a general, felt, you held your head high up to be called Pakistani because of this individual and the way he carried himself. And the main thing was that I will not bow down to anybody. You could go anywhere in the world, and the first thing somebody, especially after this regime change operation, after he was taken up by the vote of no confidence, people discuss these things. They're not ordinary Pakistanis, these are Arab people, Arab individuals. I've come across Egyptians who discuss these things, Sri Lankans who discuss these things. People, he put Pakistan back on the map, in effect. The other thing with the blasphemy, these cartoons that were created about our beloved Prophet, he put it out there in a intellectual manner, and there's now United Nations resolution with regards to this. So these are things which, and certain powers that be outside of Pakistan aren't too happy about. Okay. And again, I'll say this, okay, I'll revert back to, again, this is my 2 pence worth, that nothing is ever what it seems. And I'm a firm believer that our intelligence services are fully aware of all this. They're aware of the threats posed and so on and so forth. So therefore, this time around, a plan was made. One, we need to get Imran Khan is 2/3 majority, his majority vote bank back, because he wasn't going to win the elections. The second thing that we're moving towards is a presidential system. Okay, this is, if you look from the beginning when Pakistan was created, we have a British system, a British democracy system. Okay, and again, go back in history. History tells you a lot of things. Why? Let's go back to Liaquat Ali Khan. Why was he assassinated? We've already discussed this. And by whom, and the reasoning behind it. So this is, in effect, history playing out again. Okay, but this time around, our intelligence services again, this is my view, and I believe it will pan out. Our intelligence services are not sleeping; they're aware of this. But you can't just go out there and do what they talk about, camp politics and blocks being formed and so on and so forth. You can't just go out and do this. It's got to be done systematically. So what has happened is this vote of no confidence. They was aware that these people were talking. Obviously these opposition. They let this happen. They let these these pawns or whatever you want to do. They made them believe that yes, there is indifferences between Khan and the establishment as such, and these came into existence or in the public domain after the absolutely not comment. He was getting, and the media has helped in this. You're getting differing reports. We're giving them. We're giving the US our bases and airspace. On one side, you've got Khan saying we're not. And remember, ultimately, whether you like it or you don't like to hear this, one of the reasons for America getting a bloody nose in Afghanistan is Pakistan. And Hamid Gul's quote comes to mind, which I'll play shortly for you. That basically we was dragged into a war which we was fighting somebody else's war. Our aims were not the same. So ultimately, the reason why America lost the war is Pakistan. Yes. So you again liberated Afghanistan, and who the theatrics behind it. If you look, remember Faiz Hamid turning up today. Kabul was liberated with a cup of tea in his hands. What is that sending a message? Who is that sending a message to? That's sending a message to all of Pakistani's enemies, in effect, that nothing happens in this region without us, in effect. So there's a lot of stuff going on. So would you think after all that you would still go back and give them the military bases for them to carry on with their misadventures and so on and so forth? So again, these indifferences came to play. They were put out into the public domain, again, I believe by design. And the opposition lapped it up, and I believe they've been trapped. They didn't realize, and maybe now they realize, that this has been, where we've been trapped. But at the time, yes, they thought everything is going in their way. There's friction between Khan and the military establishment, and so on and so forth. This supposed rift, once again, was brought to light when the posting of Director General ISI was to be announced, and again the media done the job they were supposed to do, putting it out there that there's issues between Khan and the establishment over this, and they're not seeing eye to eye anymore. So there's indifferences there, and the opposition lapped it up. They lapped it up, and then there goes. Here's an opportunity for us to come in. Obviously, at the same time, they're in talks with certain entities in the West, and the ball starts rolling. So, again, I'll say this: I'm of the belief that this is all by design. This is all one big play that is playing out. Because unfortunately, especially after, again, let's go back to the Russia trip. The Russia trip was decided with those talks about this for a very long time, and Pakistan moving towards Russia. Obviously, we've already got deep links with China. In fact, if you look into the history of and go back in time of our links with China, they really our relationship between the US and shift towards China really happened in the late 80s, early 90s, after the first the Afghan-Soviet war, when Pakistan was left to clean up all the mess. And then on top of that, an ally, you sanction an ally. We've got military machinery like the F-16s, and then on top of that, we've given sanctions, and we weren't able to get parts for these things. So this, pushed Pakistan towards China, and this was the birth of the beginning, which was like the JF-17. So at the same time, Pakistan is moving towards the Soviets, in terms of trade, and this was again by design. If we go back to again what we believe, what has been written within our religious beliefs, that a bloc will be formed, and this region will move towards the Orthodox Christians. And the Orthodox Christians are Russia, in effect. Okay, that region. This is all highlighted. So we are at that point, that political, geopolitical, geostrategic time at this present moment. So this is why, again, this, there is a weight behind my analysis or theory. So anyways, this whole thing was panned out. This was in fact going on for many months before this was all planned out. And then what happens? The war in Ukraine happens, and unfortunately the how to put it, the opticals weren't great for Pakistan. The day Imran Khan goes in, Russia invades Ukraine. And again, the Russia invasion and what's going on in that region, that's the story for another day. But it's made to look like Russia is the aggressor, when Russia is actually not the aggressor. It's NATO who is the aggressor. But again, this is another story for another day, because you've got to look at what brought about this invasion and what brought about this conflict. So again, there's two schools of thought here. But anyways, going back to this whole Russia affair. So then what happens? Khan comes back, and again in the media there's noise about, Khan went on his own, on accord, the establishment were not on board, and so on and so forth. Again, by design. So this again puts everything again into play as to what's about to come, this vote of no confidence. Remember, if you look since the vote of no confidence, and I'll play a couple of recordings of Khan shortly, with where he says, you could not believe that something like this would come through. Because he thought he was going to survive, especially when the first when Qasim Suri basically threw it out of the window initially. We thought that's the be-all and end-all, but that's not the way it was designed to be, because some difficult decisions still had to be made in terms of the runaway inflation. Let's get back to that. Runaway inflation has a global impact. It's economies around the world which are suffering, not just Pakistan. In fact, I was reading in an article a few days ago, there's a lot of countries who are literally on a ventilator as a result of runaway inflation and this monetary policy. But and I believe a decision was made. Now this we've got to play along. We've got to show the West that yes, we're moving forward with your plan, and so on and so forth. And he's been sidelined, etc. But at the same time, who's been brought in to replace him? It's all corrupt individuals. I mean, as I said, more than 80% of the current incumbent government is on bail, so they're easy to maneuver. They're easy to dictate, and Shehbaz Sharif is unfortunately the weakest link. Hence why he's been made Prime Minister. And if you look at the way this no confidence thing happened, is Imran Khan, he lost his no confidence vote by one, his allies separating from him, but at the same time, these electables showing their true colors, who are now known as Lotte. But let's go. At the time, everybody's what the hell's going to happen? But this was the catalyst of what was to come. And we saw this on the first night when Imran Khan was taken out. Okay, the following day, what happened? Without Imran Khan breathing a word, the public domain got up and got out. They got up and got out. The public has started to awaken. Okay, and I will say this again, that during this time some difficult decisions had to be made. Imran Khan had already lost a lot of his vote bank. Okay, he would never have won the next elections. In fact, I'll play a clip shortly with Sheikh Rashid, who clearly puts it out there. Okay, he would not have won the next elections, and especially after the policies or the things that needed to be pushed into the mix. He would have lost even more. I mean, as I said, there was at one point people talking about people would throw eggs and tomatoes at him. Well, I'll tell you something. If he was still in power right now, and he had pushed through some of these policies and some of these difficult decisions, yes, it probably would have been the same. But instead, again, I believe this is by design. These idiots have been brought in, and they've been trapped to make these decisions, to push through these decisions, and so on and so forth, and increase tariffs and this, that, the other. Okay, and so this was the whole design. But here, as opposed to just having the pawns, which are your parliamentary ministers, this time around, who is the pawn? The pawn is the public. The general public is the pawn. It, again, I will say this is my view. You like it, you like it, you don't like it, you don't like it. Nobody's forcing this view upon you, but this is my view. What have we learned from the last 12, 15 years, especially what happened around the Middle East with the Arab Spring? Public. When public comes out, and remember the Arab Spring was orchestrated by whom? It was orchestrated by, in effect, the CIA, the Americans. They had a hand in it. And I believe that our intelligence services have learned a thing or two. They're not just ranked as the number one intelligence services in the world. And let's go back again to this Hamid Guru quote from back in 2012. I played it to you guys before, and I'll play it to you again. There will be a time when you will say no. And we've said absolutely not. There will be a time when they will turn off the taps. The taps are, we're being strangulated in effect. The taps are, being turned off. Okay? Are you going to turn around? Are you going to not fight? And then what's going to happen is the public is going to awake. There's nothing, this isn't, in effect, it's a public uprising. This is where we're heading. And how do you get the public to uprise? You make the public believe that this is injustice going on. Injustice against them. And this is exactly what is going on. Petrol prices going up 30 rupees, then another 30 rupees. Then there's talks right now, and believe you me, petrol prices are going to reach almost 300 rupees per litre. Mark my words. This is information I've received from my sources. There's a lot more. This is just this, as I said, this runaway inflation. This is just we've just started. I mean, if you look at what's happening in the West, we're entering a period of recession, and this is a global issue. Again, look at what's happening in China. The whole world's opened up. China's not. Now, why has China not opened up? You've got to look at it in that respect. And you're getting delays in cargo. Everything is getting delayed. You've got most of your container ships docked up. They're not leaving because they're not full. So you've got supply chain issues globally. What does that do? These supply chain issues cause things to get prices to get out of control. This war in Ukraine again. Ukraine being one of the largest exporters of wheat, of cooking oil. Yes. Russia being a major energy supplier. So what do you think is going to happen globally? And again, these are things that our intelligence services were aware of. Regardless of the way Pakistan's economy was going, Pakistan's economy was going in the right direction. But again, these decisions sooner or later had to be made. And Imran Khan, I'll repeat this, had lost a phenomenal amount of his vote bank. You know, he was, as I said, if he was to go into elections, he would have lost. Simple and straightforward. That would be the end of Imran Khan. So again, you can call me a crackpot, you can call me cuckoo, you can call me whatever you want. It doesn't make a difference. This is my 2 rupees worth. So everything that is going on right now is by design, it's been well thought out. And let's just think for a second. A vote of no confidence happens. Imran Khan at that point, prior to that, he's, there were surveys carried out, and he's, as I said, he lost a lot of his vote bank. What has happened since this vote of no confidence? Imran Khan his support is getting stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. And on the flip side, the opposition, everything that Imran Khan has said in the last 26 years is panning out. He said they're all going to come together for their own agendas. They couldn't care less about the public domain. They care more about these corruption cases and so on. And what do you think is happening? Do you think it's just happening by chance? That they come back in and all of a sudden Shehbaz Sharif is supposed to be going to prison. He changes the FIA director. Then the guy all of a sudden dies of a heart attack. This other chap whose accounts were being used, he dies yesterday from a heart attack. Do you think this is all by accident? If you think that this is a coincidence, then I would like to have some of what you're smoking. So these things have happened. These guys have come back in for one and one sole reason only, they couldn't care less about Pakistan. They care more about their ill-gotten wealth. Why is Nawaz Sharif sitting in London? Yes, otherwise he would have been back in Pakistan. They couldn't care about Pakistan. And so I'll go back to our intelligence services and the army domain. This that decision has been made that, hold on a second, in order to move forward, we need to move 2 steps back. And sometimes this is what is required. And the public, again, now let's go back to the public. The public is the pawn in this. For the first time, this is one game where the public is being, it's not just politicians, moving from one side to another and so on and so forth. The public, this is a big, it's all about the public. And the uprising is beginning. Just, don't forget what I'm saying. Just have a look at what's going on the ground. People will not take it anymore. And this budget is going to be one of the most horrendous budgets to date in the history of Pakistan. And who's going to stand to lose from this? The opposition is going to stand to lose from this. Pakistan will take a step back, yes. But in the larger interest, sometimes you have to take a step back to move forward. Okay? And this is where I think we're heading. So let's go have a look at these political rallies that Imran Khan did. The largest gatherings. I mean, at one point there was estimates of, I think, close to nationwide, I think 40 million people out. Obviously this stuff was shielded by the media. It was obviously because the imported government is in power. So a lot of this doesn't go out into the public domain. But people on the ground are awake. And this is without him really giving any direction. Then let's go back again to this Azadi March that he done. And what was done. And why did he stop? And the information on the ground is this, that the plan was, and this was one of his plans, Plan C, which was to be orchestrated by, and this was on the orders of Nawaz Sharif. Make it so that Khan and the army are face to face. So what happened? The imported government handed over control of the public domain during this Azadi March to the army. They wanted something to kick off between the army and Imran Khan, and then, somehow finish Imran Khan's politics once and for all. And basically, a few people get killed here and there. There's just numbers to these people. They couldn't care less. A few people dying here and there for them to save their ill-gotten means. They couldn't care less. So, and who brought this information to Imran Khan? Again, our intelligence services. This information was brought to him and he pulled off. This is what you call a leader. He's looking at Pakistan's security as opposed to his personal agendas. This is one individual who's come out for Pakistan as opposed to his own political, personal gains. So where are we heading now? Well, I think this will be wrapped up sooner rather than later. And before the end of the month, you're going to see the imported government dissolving the assemblies. And again, something that quite recently happened. I don't know if you followed the news, because there are two camps within the imported government once again. One is saying, no, why should we take on these difficult decisions? We're being trapped. They finally realized it. And one that's saying, no, we must continue, and we're going to keep on going, and we'll find a way to stick on in government and so on and so forth. Get rid of our cases and get rid of this electronic voting machine and get rid of the overseas votes and so on and so forth. So there's two camps within this. And quite recently, all of a sudden, there was news that FIA was going to come and arrest Shehbaz Sharif. Why do you think that happened? All of a sudden, this was done to send Shehbaz Sharif a message, because Shehbaz Sharif was going to pull out, before the budget. But no, that's not part of the design. You can't do that, my friend. No. You've been brought in to carry out this plan, whether you like it or you don't like it. Sorry. So he was sent a message, and his son was sent a message. Okay, by these FIA warrants coming out for them and so on and so forth. So they've fallen back in line. This is the thing with these guys. They have to fall back in line, because remember, they're only here for one reason, is to save their ill-gotten wealth. And they still don't realize they're going to get trapped even further. But all this had to play out. This all had to happen. And again, I reiterate this, that there's only been one loser, and that's the opposition and all the allies and all the electables, should we say. You know, these Tareen group and the rest of them. There's so many of them. They're the losers. The policies which are being pushed through now, the price hikes and so on and so forth, I kid you not, these people will not be able to come out in the public domain without being lynched. This is where we're heading, and this is all part of the major plan. This is all done by design. So, as you say, it's a roller coaster ride. But it's a roller coaster ride. Remember, roller coaster rides are set. They don't deviate from the path. Okay? The end goal is always the same. The end destination is always the same. Okay? So, you maybe, you know, on a roller coaster ride, you might have two separate tracks. You can move from one, you know, go one way or go the other way, but the end destination point is ultimately always the same. So this is what is going on. And again, this is my view and this is my analysis on things, and I like to read into things. It's just the way I read into things, and you know, you can call me whatever you want to call me. I couldn't care less. This is my view. If you've got a better view on things, on what's going on, and again, I'll go back to this point. Don't just look within the borders of Pakistan. Look what's happening in the region. Pakistan is a very, very important geostrategic place. The whole region is a very, very important, you know, geostrategically and geopolitically. So don't just focus your energies or your vision within the borders of Pakistan. Have a look at what's happening in the region. Have a look at where we are. Have a look, you know, dwell into, we are Muslims, we are, you know, and if we dwell into our faith, and a lot of this is already been highlighted for us. If we look to dwell into it. So this has all been highlighted, and this is it, and nobody else can push this through. And this is the whole, I believe, the whole plan. So going back again, the budget will be done, announced, and prepare yourself. It's going to be a horrendous budget. The assemblies will be dissolved. A caretaker government is going to come in, and this caretaker government may be there for a bit longer than you'd expect, potentially. You know, caretaker governments normally wrap up in a couple of months. I think maybe these guys may be there for anything between 3 and 6 months. If you note, although these policies have been pushed through in government, you know, the EVM machine and the vote of overseas Pakistanis has been there, or they've been tabulated in Parliament, and you know, they've sort of pushed it through stage 1. What people are forgetting, and this is again why you start to think that this isn't just by chance. The president is still Arif Alvi, and he still has the power to unwind everything, unwind these things that have been pushed through. So again, you make the imported believe, yes, everything is going to a certain extent their way, but nothing's going in their way, because these things again will be unwound in effect. And again, it's all in front of you. Imran Khan will come back with a huge, what we'll say, with a clean sweep this time. But the other thing you've got to look at is Imran Khan is not a young man. He's in his 70s, okay? again, I'm going to go back to this. Imran Khan's main reason for coming into politics was to awaken the public. It was the idea to awaken the public again, what goes on, how things, and the economy and how everything works. And would you believe even the most illiterate person in Pakistan now, to a certain effect, has, I believe, a little understanding on what the IMF is and what the economy is, and they've, and that's all thanks to Imran Khan, and what corruption is and what these cases are. You've only got one man to blame for this. He's not going to live forever. His main thing, the reasoning for coming was to awaken the public. And he'd done that to a huge effect. And alas, COVID came into the equation. COVID came into the equation again. This is something I believe is not natural. It's being brought about. It's something that's out there. We live in a very troubling time. But nobody knew that this was coming about. Well, save a few. Nobody I don't think within Pakistan knew this was coming about. Nobody in, general population didn't. Nobody knew. And this was a setback. This was a major setback for Pakistan, in effect. Even though we progressed through this, it was a setback. Because, Imran Khan has been, what he's meant to be doing, he's lost a lot of his vote bank. So anyways, I'm going to wrap up there, and then I'll, let's see what happens. But this is, again, what I believe. Thank you for listening.
क्यों चैलेंज कर दिया गया है हमारी हाकमियत आला और हमारी सिक्योरिटी, सॉवरेनिटी एंड सिक्योरिटी बोथ स्टैंड jeopardized टुडे, और ये हम बर्दाश्त नहीं करेंगे किसी सूरत में भी। आज अब ये फैसले का वक्त आ गया, फैसले की घड़ी आन पहुंची। हमारे पास पैसा नहीं है, हम कैसे अमेरिका का मुकाबला कर सकते हैं? मुकाबला करेंगे, डट के खड़े रहेंगे। हम गरीब हैं, बेसरो सामान हैं, लेकिन गरीबी और बेसरो सामानी जो है उसकी वजह ये नहीं कि आप आजादी आपकी छीन ली जाए, आपका वकार, आपकी इज्जत, आपकी हमीयत। अगर पाकिस्तान को एक नर्म इनकलाब के जरिए से तब्दीली लानी है तो मैं बहुत सोच समझ के ये बात करने जा रहा हूं। पहले तो अमेरिका को नो कह दें, डिफाई कर दें उसको, कुछ भी नहीं बिगाड़ सकता आपका। और अगर कहें कि हमारे पास पैसे नहीं है तो फिर कल इंडिया हम पे चढ़ दौड़ेगा तो क्या कहेंगे? जो हमारे तो पैसे कोई नहीं है, हम तो जंग नहीं लड़ सकते। क्या ऐसा करेंगे? हम नहीं करेंगे ना, लड़ेंगे ना, जो भी कुछ है इसके साथ लड़ेंगे। तो ये हमारे इख्तियार में है, उनको बताना होगा। ये काउबॉय हैं, ये आपको धमकियां देते रहेंगे, आपको इनके सामने खड़ा होना पड़ेगा और उसके बाद ये भाग जाएंगे। इनका अपना मुहावरा है, इफ यू कांट बीट देम जॉइन देम। और गैरत है बड़ी चीज जहाने तगोदाव में, गैरत फक्र गयूर, अल्लाह ताला ने कहा है दीन जो है हमारा फक्र गयूर है। गैरत है बड़ी चीज जहाने तगोदाव में, पहनाती है दरवेश को ताजे तरेदार। ये मामले गैरत के हैं, आजादी के हैं, और आजादी हम अपनी जरूर हासिल करेंगे जो तुमने छीनने की कोशिश की है। आजादी की तहरीकों को रोका नहीं जा सकता किसी सूरत में। पीपल्स पावर जो है, जब वो बरूए कार आती है, और पीपल्स पावर जो है वो खुद पाकिस्तान के अंदर अब उभरने के लिए तैयार है।
लोग आज, मैं अब जब इमरान खान को बताऊंगा तो मिलूंगा कि लोग अपने मसाइल में खुद मरने के लिए तैयार हैं। ये सारे सियासतदान गेट नंबर 4 की पैदावार हैं। भुट्टो से लेके मेरे तक, मैं एक वर्कर हूं, सबसे छोटा। मैं चौधरी साहब अल्लाह की तरफ देख रहा हूं। 15 दिन लगे, 20 दिन लगे, 45 दिन में लगे, ये इस तरह अब नहीं चल सकता। आज मैं लाल हवेली से उठ कर आया हूं, जिसका कोई बस नहीं चलेगा ना, वो अपने आप को मार लेगा। लोग अपने बच्चे को भूखा सोता हुए नहीं देख रहे। अंदर आज एक ऐसी आवाज उठी है कि ये भी अल्लाह की पकड़ में आ रहे हैं। मेरा देखें, मैं एक